Hey there, welcome to the Posit Data Science Hangout. I'm Libby Heron, and this is a recording of our weekly community call that happens every Thursday at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you are not joining us live, you miss out on the amazing chat that's going on. So find the link in the description where you can add our call to your calendar and come hang out with the most supportive, friendly, and funny data community you'll ever experience. Can't wait to see you there. I am so excited to introduce our featured leader today. We're talking with John Lin, advisor of data science and AI at Oventive. John, welcome to the Hangout. I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about you, something you like to do for fun, what you do for work.
Yeah. So I think we'll get over. Hi everyone, I'm John. Let's go over the fun stuff first. I love dragon boating. One of the things we do at work is we organize a little dragon boat team here in Calgary. It's a big passion of mine, and I do coach the team, so I'm very happy about that. But yeah, that's kind of the fun stuff. I'll talk a little bit about me. So I had a really great start after university. I graduated in 2008. This was during the best time ever to graduate, which was during the Great Recession. Even better, I had a Bachelor of Commerce, so which meant that my job prospects were a little bit thin. I was really lucky to have a job offer at Ernst& Young, which was kind of one of my first real out of university job. And it was really around IT governance. So I learned a lot about IT governance, doing a lot of auditing on these public companies. Um, and that's kind of where I got my big foundation is kind of being disciplined in that. But at the same time, this is where I started to pivot a little bit more into analytics. I got a big taste for analytics doing kind of what we call journal entry testing, but looking at these big public companies to see if there was any evidence of fraud. And that was done through these, kind of I'd say old school software packages at the time. But that's really started to really love doing kind of this data analytics work. Um, through that time, that's when I actually got my first taste of R. R back then, this was around, I'm going to say 2010, 2009. That was kind of an R GUI thing. R Studio didn't exist at the time. So R GUI was, for those who kind of remember, was a little bit rough around the edges. It was totally workable. It was beautiful, but back then it was really hard to learn. But that's kind of where I got my taste for R, and I really liked it. Doing that data analytics work, I was really lucky, pivoted me into that second part of my career. I joined Encana. Encana is an oil and gas company. It's now called Oventive. But basically, I got the opportunity to revamp an entire anti-fraud department using R here internally at the company. So that was my first real great application of R. Really wonderful things started to happen after I joined. Number one, there was these pockets. So this is around, I'm saying 2013. Little pockets of our users in the company. There was this one guy I remember very fondly. His name is Tim, and he was doing some really good production planning stuff in R. These algorithms for kriging, very difficult to do. Would normally be done in Excel, or you had to pay someone to pay an external company to do it. He just did it himself in art. But one of the challenges that he had was that he had to put everything on a network drive. So the first pain that a lot of people have when they're starting to start out with R, they don't have the right infra. Well, they just put everything on a network drive and they say, well, why don't you just go install R? And for a lot of petroleum engineers, that was already kind of over their heads. So that was a little bit challenging at the beginning for us to use R. But a second really great thing came around. So we had the algorithms in place, but they were kind of harder to use. Then the company acquired another team, and that team, what they did, and I'm kind of looking at Kyle's messages because that's what made me really happy. This team that we acquired, they brought on amazing talent, and one of the things they had was this shiny app. Again, it was a beautiful app. It solved a wonderful business problem. We couldn't buy this software anywhere else, but it was solely dedicated, it was solely hosted on a network drive. So for us, adopting that was again, it's not so bad nowadays with our Studio IDE. We kind of forget the trauma. But for someone again that was new to R and wanted to do something, it was really challenging to distribute and keep up to date. So that's when we engaged at the time our studio. And Katie was actually our customer service rep back in the day. And we brought on our Studio Connect, and it was a game changer for us. We put it on a virtual machine. We started off with 50 people, which we thought was a huge license amount at the time. We started off with 50 people. And the amazing thing about when we started to bring on our Studio Connect is that people started just to jump on board with the tool, and people started to make their own tools. And we kept growing our virtual machine bigger and bigger and bigger. We actually got to a point, and I love this part of kind of the career where you start to experience scale. I know we're not like meta scale, but we started to experience scale at the company with these apps, and we actually ran out of the ability to expand memory on our virtual machine. We had half a gig of memory on a virtual machine, and things were just getting catastrophically ending because things were super popular. And so we were like, okay, we're at our Studio Connect. We've hit a growing problem. We've proved it out. What's our next step? We were really lucky because our Studio Connect team, the engineering team, started to introduce Kubernetes. So Kubernetes, just for everyone who doesn't know, Kubernetes was a big game changer for us. It basically allows you to scale your virtual machines. So if you run out of space on one virtual machine, it adds another one, adds another one. And the other real beautiful thing is that it kind of just created little houses for people's apps. So you couldn't have sometimes when you have an R app, an R Shiny app, and it kind of runs away and it goes from like 4 GB to like 50 GB, and you're like, what the heck's going on here? So the beauty of us going to this sort of platform was that we could put everyone in their own little house. And we said, okay, everyone, you get a little bit of space. And you would think that would be restrictive at the time, but what it actually encouraged our engineers to do is actually start to develop responsibility responsibly. It was like, oh, I have a lot of space here. Why am I running out? And it got them to really think. So, anyways, long story short, that's where we are today. We put Posit Connect on Kubernetes back in 2021. Exact same thing here today. We've grown from a very small number of licenses, which we thought was an aggressive proposition. We are up to 900 people. 900 people use our platform every day. We've grown from maybe 2 to 3 publishers. We're up to 60 this morning. I just checked. 60 people who have actually published things. So I think, you know, that has been such an amazing kind of background of my career here so far, using Posit Connect to really start to accelerate kind of innovation at the company at a grassroots level.
Amazing. And there are absolutely some things that we can clarify for folks that I'm seeing in the chat, which is like, one, what is Kubernetes? Um, and Kubernetes, I think, like Don explained, is a tool that's going to automate the management of containerized applications. And like you said, it's like dynamic memory allocation. So you don't have to go and say, like, I need this much memory to this thing and this much memory to that thing. As you need it, it will create it for you. John, am I right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's one beautiful thing. Like when you're on our Studio Connect and everyone's on the same machine, you're always kind of worried that someone's going to cross the fence into someone's side, right? So like when an engineer was pulling like 5 years worth of data, that might inflict pain on the person that's, doing half a year's worth of data. So Kubernetes is this construct around like Docker images where you kind of really create these isolated environments and you put guardrails up. And it does allow for that scaling. And I think that was the big thing for us because I didn't have to worry about trying to justify every single approval for more memory because that's what IT does. Why do you need more memory? Well, I need more memory
Yeah.
because we need it. Well, are they using it responsibly? Yeah, kind of, but sometimes not. So this really helped that conversation out because IT wants us to, me being having an IT background and IT governance background, I want to be responsible, but I also want to enable people, right? So having, Kubernetes, one of the beautiful things we talked about, things can scale. It scales up, scales up, scales up during the day. And then at night, when everyone goes home, you're not stuck with a mega expensive machine. It all just gets kind of wounded down. And that's kind of a beautiful, elegant thing. And that's just made invisible by Posit Connect. Like it's so seamless. Frankly, it makes my job easier because I don't have to worry about micromanaging and downsizing every other on the Friday night.
Right. Yeah. Which is a relief, I think, to everybody, including the people who are watching the spending. for all of this. Well, I would love to hop into Slido to have some questions asked live. And the first person I would like to ask is Noor, because Noor has two questions for you. The first one is a callback to your fun thing. Noor, would you like to ask live?
Yes, sure. Hello. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Norse here. Uh, so this is a two-part question. I also remember 2008. So the important actual question that people care about is what are tips for navigating a sparse job market given your experience back in 2008? And the additional question is what is dragon boating, my dude? Like what is that? You can't just say dragon boating and just like stop.
Okay, let me try to tackle the more difficult question first about navigating a job market. I will actually just punt this one down. I've been here for 10 years and well, 13 years actually. And the only reason I got this job was really I went at the time they were looking for someone to reinvigorate their program, and it was around MS Access, and it was this other proprietary tool, and I was known for that. Um, but I think what happened, at least I was very fortunate. I had a very good, not lack of a better word, a portfolio, but a reputation, and I think for me, my personality of being kind of ridiculously enthusiastic about certain things and selective things helps out when I get a chance to show up at the table. Because on paper, I think one of the challenging propositions is Posit Connect can be substituted for 100 different things. And a lot of that nuance is lost on a paper. So, yeah, I think that's an unsatisfying answer to your question because I am human a little bit. Um, Dragon boating. What is dragon boating? It's ridiculously competitive. It's a historical sport. Um, has its roots in China, but really has been modernized for competitive racing. So you kind of get 20 people in a boat. You all sit side by side, and you're kind of hip to hip and you hold a paddle. And you actually hold it kind of top down like this. And you're actually pulling forward. You're kind of putting your paddle ahead and pulling yourself forward. And it's a very intense race. They're sprint racing. And it's usually sprint races are about 500 meters and they take about 2 minutes. But it's 20 people all working together. And that's why I really liked it here at the companies because there's not, you could do other team sports, but they all have an independent component to it. Dragon boating is just one of those things where there is no singular star. Everyone has to work together. Um, Lots of ridiculous videos online. You probably saw the Aura dancing thing. That is one of those aspects of it. The- but yeah, anyways, that's dragon boating in a nutshell.
Thank you. And that was the burning question that we were all wondering actually in the very beginning. Everyone was like, dragon boating, what? I put a picture of it in the chat. I think it's so cool. So go Google it if you don't know what it is and watch some videos. Like getting pictures on Google image search does not do it justice. You've got to go like watch videos and listen and like, yeah, experience it. Okay. I would love to see other experiences in the chat if people are willing to share about 2008, 2009. I think that that's a great topic. It was something that like my shaped my husband in my life in a really big way. And I really think that our community probably has a lot to talk about. So thank you for asking those questions, Nora. I appreciate it. Let's hop over to Logan, who asked a question in the Slido, and I will highlight it. Logan, if you would like to ask your question live, we will help you unmute, and I will go ahead and, oh, Rachel just put your question in the chat too. Oh, no, I will do that here.
Oh,
I think
sorry. I was
Rachel
putting
put
the
my
2008
question.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hi John. I'm Logan. I'm at a community college where folks may not want to always adopt new tools, unfamiliar tools. So I have a question for you. It seems like you've done some introducing of new tools. When doing that, how do you support all of your users with different skills and ensure adoption across the board?
I think for me, one of the successes when we were bringing on Posit Connect to grow to that scale, one of the things I think is a relatively large challenge is that people tend to just deploy tools and they just kind of let it be. And I think that is a recipe for failure because it's never a build it and they will come situation. So one of the things that we did that I was really happy about was to create what I call a handbook. I created an internal handbook. And the reason I created an internal handbook is because every company does things differently. You look at all the great Kickstart examples that, let's say Posit has on how to do something machine learning related or Shiny related or API related. There's all these things that you read up on the internet, but people don't know how things work internally. So every time I got a question, so this is kind of how I built it up organically. I had this little website. Now it's a portal website, but I used to have this little Hugo website that I just published. And I would be like, okay, someone gets me a question. I would go into my handbook and I'd say, oh, okay, this is a question. Let's document what the inventive way of doing something is. And this handbook has grown from, it grew from simple things like how do I even get access to Posit Connect, which I have opinions on, all the way down to why am I running into this really, really weird error message? And adapting when you develop a handbook for your own company, I think people start to go there and trust it. It works for you. It works as an active person for you, to really help drive that sort of engagement because you actually are, I think a lot of people here are empathetic to people's problems, right? And having people find an easy way to get an answer to a solved problem kind of really helps drive that virtuous cycle. Because I'm now getting pull requests on my handbook from people across the company that I've never even heard of, and they're just getting on to Posit Connect. So yeah, that was probably the big thing. Is just for me, the biggest success has been the handbook. I spend time with people. I love talking people. I love seeing people succeed. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and I feel like this is just another outlet to kind of live that dream.
Awesome. Thank you so
I
much.
thank you, Logan, for asking that question. I love it so much. And I agree, spending time with people and prioritizing that is absolutely key. Let's head back over to Slido and let's hop over to Russ's question. Russ, would you like to ask your question live, Russ Conti? I will highlight it in Slido for you so you can see it, and then I will also put it here in the chat so everybody can see it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, something worked. You said you worked with fraud data, and I've been involved in lots of stuff like that. What types of fraud were you working with? I'm aware of lots of different types. I'm curious. What were you doing?
So journal entry testing for fraud detection was really looking for unusual patterns. And I'm so like it's been a lot of times. My wife will laugh because she's the accountant, and every time I say you debit this or credit that, right? I always get it wrong. But basically, you look for unusual patterns of movement. So, the best way to do it is like if you thought about clustering something, right? And you cluster the way money moves in a company and you see, there's money going into a subscription account and you are getting cash in from someone else, right? There's usually generally applied patterns that you would see flow throughout a company. And it's when people start acting out of the ordinary where those patterns start to emerge. So, for me, one of the really powerful things is just the classic clustering methods, right? Because you could see the pattern of how data moved, and you got to say, there's a little bit of a group here that just doesn't seem to fit, and that would kind of involve the dive in on stuff. So that was kind of one aspect. Another aspect of a little bit of fraud detection is that we were always looking for fraud triangles, like, could someone set up a conflict of interest? Could someone set up their own company and start paying themselves? So if you start to, understand the standard way the business works and hopefully reasonably controlled, those sort of patterns start to come out. So that's how I normally conquered anti-fraud detection at the time. I wouldn't say there was never a magic button. I think everyone here knows there's never a magic button to detect fraud, but it kind of helped you triage and know what to look for.
Fun fact, I also came from fraud. So I've experienced a lot of these things, also like at a smaller scale. And I did lots of triangulation as well. It's probably my first real data job before I decided to go get a data uh, degree, it opened my eyes to all of the things that you can do with machine learning. And it was the very first time I ever experienced a neural network. I was working as a third party with a neural network that was learning from transactions, right, about what fraud looked like. And I got to be the person who was checking in with people and saying, hey, was that really fraud? Or me looking at it and saying, does my human brain think that's fraud? And then letting the neural network know whether or not it is so it could learn better. I highly recommend looking into fraud if that is a thing that you feel interested in. Thank you for that amazing question, Russ. Let's go back over to the Slido. And I know that Mike had a bit of a follow-up question that I saw. And because I feel like I think I saw him on his phone, I want to give him a chance to ask it without it being in Slido. Oh, there he is. Rachel typed it for him. Oh, thank you, Rachel. Okay. So that question for Mike. Mike, are you able to ask that live?
I am because the dog isn't bothering me right now.
There he is.
Yes. So the
Awesome.
question, I love the idea of creating a handbook or collating best practice and advice into one place. My question is, how do you get people to actually read it? Because I find that like if you write the handbook, then people just know that you're the person to come and ask rather than actually reading it.
I 100% empathize with that. And I think that is the double-edged sword of having an open door is that people feel like that they should just ask you. And you know what? There's kind of two things. Number one, yes, inevitably people are going to come to me, but because they trust me, and I love that as a signal. I love that people are willing to come to me. But yes, I also have a day job and I also need to get some stuff done. So I find that I've done two ways that I feel like aren't somewhat, if you do this wrong, it can look a little bit passive aggressive, i.e., let me Google that for you. That is absolutely not the right way to do it. I think one thing that I started to do was I answered the question. So I would always reply to an email or a Teams message and I say, here's the thing, here's the answer to the question first. And then I would do two things. Number one, I would just point them to the handbook very friendly. Hey, I answered this question has been answered here. And then I actually also go back and say, hey, A, did you see this? And B, if you did see it and it didn't seem to answer your question, is there a way I can improve the documentation? Because people love to give feedback, but you also signal that you care. So I wrote some documentation the other day on how to onboard to a new tool, and someone was like, and then they were like, "Oh, I must have missed that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's stop. I probably miswrote something. Let's try that." So I started to do that. The second thing that was actually kind of fun early on in the days, our team here at our data science team, one thing that we started to do was we were experimenting with early RAG, retrieval augmented generation on the large language model side. And we actually took our Quora handbook, which is written in Markdown, which is perfect for AI, and we put it into a vectorized search. And we also started to say, hey, you know what? Just so you know, you let me know how this works out. And we just put it in the query, put in a little screenshot of the same thing. Again, not being in a passive aggressive way, not to say, go talk to the bot and never talk to me again, but just to say, hey, just so you know, this exists. And it's kind of like when you start to introduce Posit Connect or you introduce any tool. It's a long marathon on culture change. And the culture change is I want to be transparent with the knowledge. Here is the knowledge. Here's how you can access it. I don't demand that you use it, but if you don't want to wait for me because I don't want to be the bottleneck, come here next time. Maybe you'll get your answer.
This is tough. This is like when I was working in fraud, I had a similar situation where I was like, oh no, I've become a human encyclopedia and it's faster for everybody to call me, pick up the phone and call my extension than to figure this out on their own. And so I did a ton of reiteration. Like every time someone asked me a question, I would send them the answer inside of the workbook, the handbook that we had created, right? Like here's where you find that next time. I wish I could say that that worked. I don't think it did. I don't think it did, but we also did classroom training eventually where we were like, oh, there's a need. Let's set up classroom training. People can go through that over the course of a few days. Okay. Thank you so much, Mike, for your fantastic follow-up. And I'm going to head over to Slido and ask an anonymous question. Thank you, anonymous asker. I will put it in the chat right now so that everyone can see it. But it is, how did you learn R? What Coursera courses could you recommend, or would you simply recommend reading books by Hadley Wickham?
So I'm going to speak because this nowadays it's so different about how to learn. Let's not. I'm not going to go into that side because that's a very deep, complex topic on education and enablement. But I if I look at my bookshelf over there, I've got a few. I've got maybe 5 or 6 books. On our Hadley Wickham was one of them. Um, I I did a lot of online. So one thing I am fortunate here. Um, I don't really, to be honest, I think the R stuff was quite a bit traumatic because it took me a lot of personal pain to go through. This was in the age before good YouTube tutorials and those things. So I read a lot of books and I was, just kind of grinding through it. Um, I think the only thing that really accelerated my work wasn't going through the coursework because the coursework is great, but it's also kind of generic. When I want to learn how to use R, there was no resources for it. So I ended up just applying it directly to my word use case and just seeing how well it stuck and then starting to write it down. Like, so let's say we talk about R again, and I was doing it early in audit days. I would write a procedure. I would take something that I would learn from Hadley Wickham or many of the brilliant people out there that I'm trying to learn from and just do simple stuff and just try to document it. I think you can read all you want. I kind of take this like 3D printing. You can read up all you want about 3D printing, but until you see the magic of something coming out and completely collapsing because you set up something wrong on the printer, you won't ever really learn how to use a language. So I'd say that because R was a challenge for me to learn, especially back in the day. Python was a little bit easier, but still a little bit hard. I think my only real thing is at some point after you read all these great things, you have to start applying because you could stay in learning mode forever, but I don't think it's going to stick.
How absolutely timely. I just got myself a 3D printer. It's still in the box. I've never used it before. And I am so excited to make terrible things for at least a week that don't work and learn a bunch. But you're right, watching videos is no substitute. Okay, thank you, Anonymous Asker, for that fantastic question. And I have to shout out Hadley. If you enjoy learning from Hadley, you will want to come to the Data Science Lab on February 17th because Hadley's going to be joining us. He's going to be live coding a Tidy Tuesday analysis, like without ever seeing the data before, whatever data is that Tuesday, he's going to be doing it. If you would like to register for that and you are not already, you can go to pos.it/dslab. I'll put that in the chat. Jared says, which printer did I get? I got a Bamboo A1, not the mini, the regular size. Okay. If you have 3D printing tips for me, specifically about just like basic PLA, send them my way. Okay. And that said, also next week at the Data Science Lab, you have Isabella and I. We will be sharing with you. We're going to be covering collaborating in GitHub with Quarto. So come hang out with us. Okay, let's head back over to Slido. Sorry for that slight detour. I just had to shout that out because it was so, so timely. We have a question from Arsenis. Arsenis, would you like to ask that live? And I will also stick that in the chat for everybody to see.
Sure, thanks, Libby. And hello, Jonathan. Been a while. How are you?
Good, man. Good to see you here.
Good to see
Uh-oh,
you
small
too.
world.
Yeah, so I used to work at Oventive with the field development folks that built Shiny apps for Oventive. Um, my question was kind of asked already, so I'm going to change it around a little bit. Logan asked the question that was, well, I asked a question that was similar to Logan's, and so I'm going to change it. It has to do with your approach and techniques that you use to getting people not only to use, especially with like oil and gas engineers who might earlier on have been more reluctant to use things like R and Shiny. What are some of the techniques that you use to maybe get them to trust the tech and some of these technologies that help them do things a lot faster?
For for me, so if I reflect on trying to get people on, I think the biggest thing was empathizing with the pain. There's a lot, we're all trying to solve our own problems in our own way. We're in the weeds in our own stuff. And sometimes to look at what an engineer is doing and you're seeing they're making great stuff. I want them to focus on that. So for me, I think it's a little bit more of a service, right? Like when I say service, I mean I'm in service of the person. I love just to sit down with people, say what they're working on, see what problems they're running into, because it's never for me, it's never the answer isn't always like, oh, pause and connect, just throw it there and you're done. Like it's not that because it feels kind of biased, but sitting with someone and understanding their pain for me has been the biggest part because they're so into the weeds of solving a problem. Like here's a great example. You deploy something on Streamlit. A lot of people love doing Streamlit here. And they eventually, you scale up and then you run into some issues with Streamlit because you're trying to do stuff and you're sitting with the problem and empathizing with people for me has been probably the biggest changer. And then on top of that, because you've done the right thing. What is the right thing in my opinion? It's making sure that you're deploying on a platform that is scalable, that you don't have to worry. There's a lot of things that if you take the worry out of people, then people feel like, oh, you know what? Talking to you has given a great sense of freedom. Here's a good example. Early on, when we deployed Posit Connect, there was I appreciate everyone's desire to maintain cost control, but it kind of gets a little bit too much. So people are like, oh, I don't want to deploy onto this platform because it's going to take a license and that's going to cost money. So they see the dollar and they just kind of take it like personally, like, oh, that's going to come out of my paycheck. And I think people, when you take away that pain, so my decision, I made an executive decision at the time. Posit Connect, the moment you come in, you get a license. Don't ask me. And that's removed the friction for not the user who's coming in, because they don't ever really care, oh, if I access this, but it's the publisher. The publisher's like, who am I going to get this out to? Well, if I have to get this out to people, then I have to carry about the licenses and I have to carry about the security. No, you put it on our platform. You don't worry about licenses. You don't worry about security. I've made the decision to onboard people for quote unquote, frictionless, you know, and we already have security figured out. So if you kind of show that they get to focus on the fun things and you deal with quote unquote boring stuff, people gravitate and people really come to you as kind of an enabler of things versus being kind of a restrictor of tools.
I really like that, being an enabler, not a restrictor. That's something that, John, when I first met you, that you said was like, make the right thing to do the easy thing to do. It's also something that Elliot Murphy said, who's a VP of engineering here at Posit, that like, if you want people to not be constantly like circumnavigating the barriers that you've set up to protect them and protect the company, then make the easy thing to do the right thing to do. And then people won't have to create shadow IT or get around your things in creative ways because they will be able to do their job without having their hands tied. So I really, really love that. Thank you very much, Arsenis, for asking your question. And we had an anonymous one that I think we can ask pretty quickly. It was, do you block time each week for documentation? Do you set aside time for that?
I believe it or not, I don't,
I don't
because
either. Does anybody? Tell me in the chat.
so there are times where I think, it's good to have strategic thinking. Like getting things done methodology, I think it's wonderful. And one of the things in getting things done where, it's a really kind of a framework for like freeing up your brain because you got a lot of stuff stacked in there. One of the things that getting things done says is like put time away to plan out your week. And I love that. I think documentation is a little bit different. I think I build it into the process where someone asks me, I look in the handbook. Is the handbook answer it? No. Okay, I will answer it and I will update the handbook. I accept it as part of my debt cycle. I don't want to treat it as a separate thing because it kind of comes like technical debt. I'm going to push out this change and I know that's not very good. So I'm just going to put myself a ticket to do it next week. And next week, there's something more important, a bigger fire. So that gets punted. So for me, making the documentation easy to write, put it in, doesn't have to be perfect, right? just put something in there. And if someone comes in and says, okay, this, John, can you explain this a little bit? I'm like, oh, you know what? Someone's reading that. Let me expand it a little bit more and make it a little bit more human, right? Like, don't worry about, for me, I don't put time away. I just put it in. If it's rough, that's fine. It's not writing a novel. I'm not writing something that's getting published on the great internet. It's just for internal use. And if it's kind of rough, it's okay. And I can refine it later. But at least someone has something to jump off of. So I think that's a long way of saying, for me, I don't, because I've made it a habit just to write and do it right away.
Do it right away. It's kind of like the mantra, don't put it down, put it away. If you are ADHD, you will know that mantra can be very helpful. Don't put it down, put it away. So
You
don't pass it off. Do the documentation right now.
It's like I'll jump on that same analogy. You're not done cooking until the kitchen is clean.
Oh man. Well, when I'm done cooking, the kitchen's a disaster, and my husband is the one going like behind me, putting everything away. Oh, goodness gracious. God bless my husband. Okay, let's head back over to Slido where we have a couple more questions. And we have about 18 minutes left. So if you have more questions, hop into the Slido and ask them. I'm going to put the link to the Slido one more time in the chat. Rachel says, I like using every possible pot, pan, or dish. Same. Every single one is going to be dirty. Okay, don't forget, this is my reminder to everybody at the like, hey, we have 15 minutes left, Mark, that if you have questions about submitting a conf talk for PositConf 2026, stick around after the call. I will say, John, if you have somewhere to go, you can obviously bye-bye and say goodbye, but stick around so that Rachel and I can help you with those answers. Okay, next question we have here. And it is about getting leadership buy-in. It's an anonymous question. It says, how would you recommend getting a company to buy in or get started with not just you can download it to your computer setup, even if you only have a few users? And this comment says n equals 1 or 2, especially if they're very stringent with security. This is so relatable to me. Thank you, Rachel, for putting that question in the chat. I feel like I have been in this situation. Do you have any advice, John, for that initial, like, how do I get leadership, people with the purse strings, right, to say yes to this?
You know, I think there's kind of two angles. Number one, for me, knowing how to answer IT questions and being even nowadays, I'm becoming more distant from it. So getting some, like, say if you're in a high security situation, always just talking to, like, I think large language models are like the big deal right now, right? Like, I'm sending my data out to a large language model. How do what are the security risks? Are people going to train on my data? I think engaging the right stakeholders on the IT security side has gotten me a lot of wins and buy-ins because it feels like I'm being transparent. Let's say we talk about Claude Code, and there was this whole thing about like, Moltzbot or whatever it's called now. For those, that's a cultural thing. That's wonderful reading in itself. But like being kind of an advisor to that has gotten me a lot of wins on the security side. Now, the business side has always been, I empathize with you guys, with whoever asked that question, because it's always been a challenge. And I think for me, I don't know if my strategy is considered kosher, but I show and I don't tell. Because I think a lot of people, when people, it's hard to imagine what a better case would be like. You could say, I'm going to develop an app and it's going to optimize workflows and it's going to make decision making faster. Those are all kind of great business line things, but they don't really show any emotion, right? So it's hard to compel to the person above you in the tree to do it. So I've always loved this show, don't tell mentality. Work within the confines you have. Like the Shiny app that we talked about years ago that was on a network drive. We said, you know what? It's making changes. It's making people's lives better. But there's a lot of stuff I know I'm missing, and I don't want to do it wrong. I don't want to be shadow IT. I don't want to circumvent installation policies and do stuff like that. So for me, I like to show and I don't tell to get kind of that imagination going, and then also an express an interest to be better, because I think it shows a little bit of professional responsibility that you aren't going to cowboy things at all costs. You're willing to go at a reasonable pace, but you still need to have something to show. And I think that's been my biggest success. It's been for a lot of my projects, I'll be honest, it is a grind. It can be a grind. You think you're doing the right thing. We had Posit Connect was one of them. Doing the handbook was one of them. I wouldn't get buy-in to do that if I just said, I'm going to make a company repository. That sounds great in theory, but people don't see it until they actually start to feel the pain that you're solving. So that's my advice. I love to show and not tell, but don't show something that's perfect, but just show enough that it gets people excited.
Yeah. And also, like, it wasn't 0 to 1 completely for you because you started with like connect on a virtual machine first, right? Like there was this in between stage where you were maybe showing value before that bigger investment maybe and like more seats and Kubernetes happened.
100% right. Like you don't want to over optimize, right? Like I think when
Mm-hmm.
you train a
Exactly.
model and you think about all the features you can put in, there's so many things you could do. And what if I add this data set? What if I add that? It is you have a career, and take advantage that you have time to get to where you want to go. And there will be bumps along the way. There have been absolutely bumps along the way. But if you do the right thing, for me, eventually it will come.
Thank you so much. Thank you, question asker, anonymous question asker. I hope that that helped you along in your journey. There was an anonymous question that I saw that is not for John, but I still want to answer it. It said, is there a list of recent job posts via this forum? Because I'd like to post a new requirement that's about to open up at my company. And the best place to do that is absolutely the Discord server. So go join the Discord server. And there is a channel called Job Board and Looking, I think. That is the best place to share that and socialize it. All right, let's head back over to Slido. And I'd love if Alex could ask their question live. Let me highlight it. It was moving around in Slido. People were upvoting it. Alex, are you available to ask that live? It's Alex Andres.
I
There he is. Hey.
am. Hi. Thank you very much. Oh, I just got to find it. Oh, there we go. Sorry, it jumped around on me. So, how do you pick the topics to learn more about? LLMs have displaced ML as the hot topic, but there are still many advancements in traditional ML to keep up to speed on. On a related note, how do you pick how far to go down the rabbit hole with new topics that you're trying to stay up to speed with?
So the question was, I think the way I interpret this, Alex, is how do you know what to prove? So I've been honestly very privileged. I've been lucky to be able to follow a lot of the interests that I have. R was one of those interests. I always like to say, I personally don't overthink about what is best for my career. I kind of think about what interests me. So let's talk about dragon boating, for example, in this data, and let's talk about how it works its ways back. Always wanted to do an iOS app. That was something I've wanted to do for the last 3 years. So I started to pluck away at it. Um, and then dragon boating came along. It's like, oh, what could I do? So I'm like, well, I'm interested in dragon boating. I love coaching dragon boating. I love the mechanics of it. But how could I apply a new technology or a new way of thinking to it? So, one of the things I smashed together was, well, could I use a vision model, i.e., taking stuff from my data science background, to taking my interest in dragon boating and this new thing and try to combine it all together. And for me, I think for me, being interested in pursuing something that I cared about has been much more fulfilling because then what happens is that you talk about this stuff, right? You talk about, oh, I tried this iOS app thing, I can see the limits of it, but vision wise, it's good. And then someone's like, oh, at work, hey, we want to start deploying native to iOS. Oh, we want to start doing vision stuff here at the company. And you're like, oh, you know what? The interest I've had can kind of propel me into the next problem that the company has. So I think I've been privileged, I'll be honest. Being able to follow what interests me has been very fortunate in setting up the next steps of my career. So that's kind of that kind of answers that first part. How deep you want to go, um, I think I'm going to sound like an economist, but it's really about that marginal benefit. How much pain does it take to get to that next level, and is it worth it. For me, I could talk about my Georgia Tech master's attempt. That is kind of that same thing. You do some learning. Are you going to get more benefit if you do see it keep going? But you'll know when to pivot, and that's okay to break earlier than the goal because eventually you'll find your way through. That's kind of my way of saying just follow what interests you because this is your life.
This is your life. You only get one.
Always good advice.
Well,
Thank you.
absolutely. And on that note, there was a question that feels very much like a career advice question. And we always try to get at least one career advice question in. And it's from an anonymous asker. It says, do you have any advice on how to overcome fear and feel confident enough to ask questions or voice opinions among coworkers who come across as confident and have a lot of opinions in the daily stand-up meetings? This is a very specific question, but I think that so many people can relate to it.
I think this is a tough one. A stand-up meeting where someone has strong opinions. I think the best way I was gonna say I'm not usually the best person because I'm usually the most outspoken guy, so I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of the fence.
I've been
Um,
both, honestly.
I think honestly, there's a lot of people. I also always have to remember there's always a lot of smart people, and every time I kind of get in this mode, like I kind of feel it now in my back, right? So there's someone really smart and they're saying something, and it could go both ways. I've found, and I've gotten feedback on this, that John, you need to be more brave in just talking, just picking up the phone and calling. We can be really. We can protect ourselves and our opinions behind the screen, behind the office, even being remote to a certain degree, and I love, and I don't think all of that is bad. I think I love working remote and I think it's great, but you have to know when you have to break down the wall to make it human again. And if it's just this kind of one-way communication and it's not a two-way kind of collaboration, I think you can feel like that. So for me, the thing I'm always working on is just picking up the phone and calling or FaceTime or something like that. That to me it's the hard thing to do. Um, but I find that most of the time, the person on the other side, like I'm getting a lot of wonderful questions now about, well, is Posit Connect ready to do things at production? It has the stereotype of being this. I'm like, actually, no, it's not. And let's talk through it, right? And I think that helps. But you can't get that just by spamming and pushing it out. That works to a certain degree, but you gotta call. You gotta call. And I say that to myself every day. I have to call.
Yeah. The answer to everything at the Hangout is talk to people. And it's funny how that over and over again, that's the answer to just every single question is talk to somebody. And I think that it's easier to be brave when you know that the context of the tone of your voice and the tone of somebody else's voice is like added to the conversation. Because often, if it's only ever via text, the danger of being misread or misreading somebody else and feeling worse than you really need to feel is a little bit greater. So I really, really love that answer. And I will say as well, just as a personal, putting my 2 cents in there, that not all of this is on you as an individual to just be more brave. It's on your team and your organization from a cultural level to create the psychological safety to ask questions or to give your input. And it's okay to expect that and to also help cultivate it. And if it gives you any help at all, if you can think about anybody else in the room who might also be nervous, if you step up and ask your question and you're brave, you are lending your braveness to everybody else as well. That always helps me. Okay, let's finish up with a question from Natasha. And it has an asterisk, so that means that I'm going to ask it. And it says, do you program much in your current position, or does your work consist more of consulting? And this is a really interesting question for an advisor, right, of data science and AI. How do you feel about where you are in your career and what you get to do?
I love the question because I think there's always this intersection where I think as people grow up, you have to choose. And for me, I think I've been kind of straddling that. I would say I spend about half my time communicating, advocating, evangelizing, helping people, and I spend the other time doing stuff because I think for me, my personal value is that if I'm going to talk about something, I need to be at least have some level of exposure to it. Large language models, AI, what can it do? Is it going to take over your job? Well, actually, no, because it's going to run into the jagged edge. I'm stealing that from someone, Ethan Mollick, I believe. The jagged edge. But you, as an advisor, don't get to speak from any place of well-groundedness unless you know what it's like to be in the trenches, right? Like a machine learning model is not going to do it, but why isn't it going to do it? Well, let's look at the data. So I actually am in this really weird spot where I do half-half, and it's a challenge because there are days I want to be more technical, and then some days I see that my marketing side is or my evangelizing and communication side has been struggling. I'll talk, we have our user group. We've had it for 6 years, but it hasn't been 6 years at 12 one month, one session per month. It's been like kind of haphazard. And so, I tend to try to do both. And it might work to my detriment. It might not. I'm not quite sure yet. But I love I have to, for me, if I'm going to say something, I have to be sure of it. And the only way I'm going to be sure of it is just by kind of doing both at the same time.
Fantastic advice. I hope that if I ever move into a leadership role that I will get to do both, because I think I would miss not being hands-on. Okay, as we finish here in the last just couple of minutes, there was a question that I will paraphrase so we can ask it a little bit more quickly, and it was, is it truly necessary to have deployment experience when you are looking for a job? Or if you're looking for a job in AI, is it truly necessity to have like deep AI and LLM experience? Or is it still possible to learn on the job?
I think
It's tough.
that's a tough question because I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of gatekeeping right now on some jobs that are quote unquote AI related. Um, and I'm going to take a step back. I actually don't know if it's the tool that is going to get you hired. It's how you communicate the business problem. We all know how the intricacies of a gear on how a model works or how a large language model thing works. We kind of know the gears about it, but it's never about that. It's about solving a business problem. So for me, like I was just speaking to an HR advisor, and we got excited, and we didn't get excited about the AI thing we're going to use and how to do it, but it's really about what are we actually going to solve to make people's lives better. Everything else that you do supports that mission. And for me, if you put the mission on the tool, the ML, the model, the technology of choice of the moment, I think it's going to put you on this treadmill where it's really difficult to keep up. But if you are solving the problem, you have suddenly many, many ways of exploring that. So for me, that's been how I approach it. Not so much about the tool, not about the gatekeeping. I always come in with saying, how can I solve your problem, not your problem with this?
With this exact tool. I like that. So maybe the advice could be if you have a portfolio or a resume highlighting the ways in which you solved problems and what the business problem was and what your solution was, with the tool as an incidental, like this was just the tool that I used to do it. Okay, fantastic. Well, it's the top of the hour. So I will say thank you so much, John, for joining us. I hope that you had a good time.
It was a wonderful. I love the questions here. I loved it. I couldn't keep up with the chat. There's so much. It's so infectious. I love it. This is why I come, and I'm grateful for everyone to asking such thoughtful questions and seeing everyone's face. Just it gives me the energy to go back and be a little bit more productive. I'll try. It's been a high right now, so thank you.